Hi, everyone. How's it going? Wednesday evening here. I've got my washed hair up in a tam. It's January, and it has been phenomenal weather here in Northeast Minnesota. Just so blessed to have this weather. It's been great. This particular talk tonight, this video, is about transitioning. We are in some really big, very obvious times of transition. For quite a long time, for hundreds and now thousands of years, our environment that we refer to as nature, the trees, the plants, the shrubs, the mycelium down below that connect everything, the mushrooms and the bushes and the trees all have their own underground communication. It's called mycelium, and the roots that grow underneath help to feed each other very symbiotically. One is helping the other. And this is a nature-based Wi-Fi under the ground mycelium. So when you see the part of the plant on top of the ground, the mushroom, we call it, that's actually referred to as a fruit body. If you read Paul Stamets, you know this inside and out. It's kind of nice. We all are going to learn it at some point, the first time. Do you remember watching cartoons? Are you of the age, or did you ever see the cartoons, the Flintstones? We saw them pedaling the cars with their feet, and we saw Betty and Wilma and all the different Flintstone folks in the Bam Bam. We also had the other side where Hanna-Barbera, the cartoon company, in 1962 came out with the Jetsons. And the Jetsons were supposed to be this absolute utopia. I mean, you didn't have to want for anything, except that George Jetson was such an electric pro that his terrible boss, Mr. Spacely, right, at Cogswell, I think it was Cogswell or Spacely Sprockets, was always berating George and always firing him. And, then he would call him back in because there was no one else that was able to do the electrical work like George could do. And George and Judy and their children, Elroy, and their maid, Rosie, they lived way up in the stratosphere. They didn't live on Earth anymore. So all of their travels in these flying cars and their homes were way up in the stratosphere. They were in space. It was alluding to in 1962 space, that we were going to be occupying space. Now that so many of us are saying, whoa, look at what the Simpsons had on their show. Oh my gosh, look at what this show had and that show had. They were actually showing us prophecy. They were showing us what even hadn't happened yet. They show Trump going up the escalator, or they show these different things, right? We also had shows like Dark Shadows with Barnabas Collins. And we had all these different last names and so forth and so on. But I was reading a really interesting article on the internet because I thought, let me just peruse a little bit about the Jetsons, because I'm feeling like a lot of what's being injected or proposed to be injected has more to do, because we're not allowed to call it a vaccine legally, even though it's still called that, has a lot more to do with updating the human revision to be able to transition the human vehicle. If you look to the Bible, you'll look to the fact that it speaks to 144,000. So this particular article about the Jetsons was very intriguing to me. Like I said, I perused a few things. What did other people see in the Jetsons? Just like maybe 30 years ago, I started really perusing Grimm's fairy tales. Wait a minute. I don't think these were always just, idyllic children's little stories. In fact, they were grim and gruesome And it's purported that it wasn't even the Grimm's brothers. There was a very large family and had a lot of horrific, tragic events. In fact, that we think it was the librarian women that the two brothers married that actually wrote all these fairy tales, right? So when I looked at the other perspective about the Jetsons, it was really interesting because they said in this article, was it a utopia or a dystopia, right? We think about George Orwell's 1984 as a dystopian, meaning not so good. You might not want to be there. If you're old enough or someone showed you this movie, there was a movie with Soylent Green where the people were eating these wafers and they were like, oh my God, I think we're eating dead people. You know, and all of these things, maybe they're not exactly true and maybe they certainly are provocative. And it's not like I'm saying, oh my God, they're all true. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that the Jetsons, according to this particular author in this article, and if anyone asks me to, I can post a link below my video, said, you know, was it really utopian or dystopian? Because it turns out George and Judy Jetson go to live way up in the stratosphere because the earth is actually flooded and ruined. And so not everyone got to go. In fact, those that didn't have a shit ton of money, those that were impoverished, so to speak, those of many different types that, I don't think they need to go, right? I mean, you know how entitlement and privilege plays out. I don't have to tell you. They didn't get to go. So maybe they built and somehow restarted their lives on Earth. I don't know how it goes, but I didn't even know this much about the Jetsons. As I've looked at the etymology of Mark, as in Mark of the Beast, I've looked at the etymology so that, you know, the prefix M-A-R for marriage, Mark, M-A-R-C, or M-A-R-K. Marginalization, Mars, right? The god of war, Mars. How have we been so interested in Mars recently? We are in a time that many people and even some government agencies are referring to as the Great Reset, okay? The Great Reset. What and how do we make sense of this when it's so difficult for me to make sense in 37 years of helping self, family, and others to heal? Thousands that came to a professional space, that worked through video, that worked long distance, that worked through the telephone for many years, that worked into my profession, came to my professional space. Why don't the hospitals have proactive therapies? Intravenous IVs, vitamin C, minerals, hair tissue testing, right? Why don't we have harmonics? Why aren't we using mind-body any longer? Mind-body is extremely powerful. It does take an aptitude. It does take a great deal of experience to really, it's not like, oh, your leg's hurting. Well, that's just like, oh, it's your left leg or your right leg? I mean, that is a real oversimplification. But as we have permitted, we the people have seen the destruction of nature, have come inside more and more into our homes, our litter boxes, our cages, our boxes. And less time is spent out in nature. As I was out with a friend today for a couple of hours, we ran a few errands to the tool place, and he wanted to go to Quick Trip and get a coffee, and I wanted to go through the drive-through car wash over there, and we did a few things so we could spend some time while I was doing some errands, some quality time together. And I notice a lot, is that we're further and further dividing during these transition times. That fewer and fewer people are really getting out. And so Now, a lot of the younger folks that are perfectly able-bodied are sitting at home with RPG role-play games like RuneScape and other games on the computer where you get very invested with the financial currency and the it's like an avatar. It's a I forget what my son used to call it, but my son used to play RuneScape, and he loved playing RuneScape. Drew introduced him to it when I was doing foster care. I had a boy that was a little bit older than my son, and I was like, oh gosh. One of the downfalls of that is that sometimes other things are introduced into your home that you really wish never came. And RuneScape is one of them because you can just see the enticement to addiction. What if, with all this talk by Mikovits, Dr. Brian, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, all of these people that I've listened with, and my own experience, my own reading, my own work with health, my own seeing. The dogs are, look at this, you gotta just see Rottweiler Chihuahua here. Look at this. Just for a minute, I'm just gonna take a pause. 165-pound Rottweiler, 5-pound Chihuahua, okay? No, people ask me all the time, aren't you afraid he's gonna get hurt? Aren't you afraid? Oh my gosh, no. I leave and I go and they're alone and no one's ever been hurt because, they understand they're not at war with each other and they're also not in starvation for resources, which is what's going on with the people. Now that where the resource used to be mother first, mother, we had our clean water, we had our clean air to breathe, and it gave us a much higher vibration. We had clean food. There is a man who, as I finished 2 books in the last 4 nights, 2 great books, one by an author who is now an ancestor by many, many years, and the other one who's an author who I believe is still alive, and both of them were into hair tissue testing for a very long time. And it was really, really interesting because the same theme in individuals who do health and healing and wellness, I want to just say medicine, except that there's such a kickback. You can't do that. You're not trained by the AMA. You're not a doctor. Okay. So each and every one of these individuals that I go, wow, I really respect that work. They say the same thing as Dr. Sabi, as myself, as Professor Arnold Ehret, over and over and over, people that had thousands and thousands of hours like I do, who have people who've written testimonials and say, I had lupus for 27 years. I had psoriasis. I'm a pastor for over 31 years. I was put on disability. I couldn't conceive a baby. I had PCOS. I had myasthenia gravis, thymus. I had advanced ovarian carcinoma, documented fully. I had Parkinson's. We almost got there. We almost. But even his wife said, they're not going to let you cure my husband of Parkinson's disease. They're not going to let that happen because my husband is too credible a witness. And he's already said, you're the smartest woman he's ever met in his life. And I hope you're listening. His wife, I won't say your name, I'll keep it confidential. I hope you're listening. I know you often do. I think about you all the time. It was a privilege and an honor to work with your family. Our people wouldn't be hijacked with addiction, alcoholism. They wouldn't be eating phony foodstuffs called food products that you buy in the grocery store. They wouldn't be on all the medications, which are nothing more than a glamorized drug in an orange bottle being sold at a very high price. And there's a lot of commodity exchange going on. So now with the new invention, today, 65 and older is going to get it. Veterans are going to get it. Thank you, Val. This is not medical freedom. This is abuse of medical authority. Do you see the difference? How is it that I'm hearing that this is a transition device? And that when I listen to Ms. Mikovits, PhD, and when I listen with these people at paid trainings, I've been in numerous, not just one or two, and also the free one, the Focus on F, I won't say, because of algorithms and triggers and things like that. You already cannot reach my YouTube unless you have an account. My videos won't even show up to you. You won't even be able to find them. I received notice. Okay. It was my goal, my mission, my life mission at 60 years old in July, 59 right now, is the centers, the books, the centers, the Council of Elders. It would make my life complete to be able to be one of the first Council of Elders that we have in various communities that are built on morals, ethics, integrity, trust, cooperation, and the ability to agree to disagree. I've worked very diligently 4 decades. I showed you my iridology from 89, 92, and 95. When I was pregnant was my last one. And she said, you got a lot more detoxing to do. And right now being pregnant is not the time to do it. I was 33. Planned pregnancy. So detoxification means we need to have our people in a place because they can't really do it at home. This is why I said 2021 is the last year I'll be doing paid consults with clients overall, okay? It's not gonna happen anymore. Because you go home to your environment and you've never seen anyone prepare whole foods on a regular basis, whether you eat some meat and it's wild foraged or wild caught, and you also eat whole foods, that's great. Whatever you want to eat is what you want to eat. It's not up to me. I've been in this too long. I'm not here to force everybody into one thing or the other corral or whatever. It's also a matter of looking at your elements. If you're high copper, I got to get something to kind of ground you and bring you down, which is what I've even done for myself, bringing the fish on board. Okay, so I like to be an open book about that. But if this injection is, as in the Jetsons, the dystopia in my mind, and I didn't finish telling you. So George and Judy Jetson are one of the privileged 144,000. They get to go live up in the stratosphere. Okay? They aligned with the Mars, marginalization, cutting it back, bringing the people up to the stratosphere, elevating them above the rest that are going to kind of figure it out on Earth. And George has made Rosie. Do you remember Rosie, the robot? Rosie the robot, and and she would come and do things for George and Judy, and people would be scurrying around, and Rosie was there. Rosie, listen to this. From this article, I learned this tonight, perusing before my live stream, wanting to bring a couple other interesting little nuggets into transition times. And Rosie is the uploaded consciousness into a synthetic, the uploaded carbon consciousness into a de facto slave woman synthetic robot, okay? But Rosie is George Jetson's uploaded consciousness of his 125-year-old mother who's deceased. There's behind the story details about the Jetsons, which present quite an eerie picture, okay? So when I trust what I hear, and I hear that we are going to need to have a domestication revision. We're going to have to be revised. It's like if I have a book, I'm revising and expanding Detox and Heal Your Thyroid. I really am. I had to completely put it to the side, and I'm still weary and still in pretty serious and steep grief. But I got my face on here. I'm being real. I'm telling you, this is how I'm up leveling. I will revise it, meaning I will add new to it. I will update it, right? So in laws and so on and so forth, they have a revision, right? It's been appealed or remanded or whatever, and then they revise the statute, right? Human life, this vehicle that you get into, is not going to be copacetic. You won't be able to breathe with the plans big tech has on the field. So the field is the electromagnetic field that you're living in that you can't see, you can't touch it, but you live within it, right? Your central nervous system connects on thy rod and thy staff. They comfort me. It connects to the brain and the upper holy trinity of glands. And to be anointed is to be able to have the ability to secrete. So when you start to have excess calculus, which I pick up on your hair tissue test, your calcium levels are going too high, you're in self-protection mode, and the calcium levels are rising in your body, you can count on the fact, under stress, right? How many of you have been under stress in the last year, thinking about Babylon and election and all of this, tomfoolery, all of this insanity, and then, losing children, and not just me, hundreds of thousands. Drug addiction, and oh my God, you're worried day in and day out. I know now. I know what that feels like to have that absolute grip of insane worry that they may be dead in a bathroom and you can't even open the door. And so you're at the store and you're thinking they didn't come out. It's been like 5 minutes. Oh my God. You're knocking on. Are you okay? Yeah. No, I mean, are you okay? Can you unlock the door? Because if you hear their head hit the door on a big, thick door that's locked, the amount of time it takes to open that door to save their life may be too much. And so this pressure that you go through day after day after day is like looking at an insect, a fly that's been sprayed with insecticide, and it's affecting its neurologic system, and it's like floundering a little bit and it's doing weird things, and you watch the fly, and eventually, let's just give an elongated example, but let's just say the fly is actively dying for 6 or 8 hours on your windowsill, and you hear it going, buzz, buzz, you know what I'm talking about, okay? This is what I started to feel and think during the last year of my son's life was like, my God, it's like you've sprayed him with insecticide, but look at our world. I mean, just this rise, just morning, this AM, I rise and I see the beautiful sun just beaming through my huge windows. And I look up and I see this really chunky, scripted chemtrail all up in the sky. And I'm like, whoa, it's diffusing really fast, unusually fast. I go outside and I take the dogs out and it's like choo, 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 lines all over the sky. Grandma knew in 1965, there were ships up there. She knew that when people talked about UFOs, yep, they're unidentified flying objects, but we know they're the handlers. We know that a certain bloodline considers itself to be the elite. It considers itself, because of its heightened intelligence, its ability to manipulate words and sophistry, and very rare do you find someone with an exceptionally high bloodline, a content, who is not selfish, who cares. It's just not seen. That's why they call them the reptiles. Okay? And people that have academics that talk about brain and psychology refer to the hindbrain as the reptilian brain, right? It wants what it wants, and it's, kind of reptilian, right? All right. So I don't know if I've lost you. If you're still on board, it looks like we've got 5 people here. These are transition times. In order for you to keep breathing, when you change the electrostatic environment, you're going to need to be retrofitted with particles that are going to go in as little tiny, little bitty robots. They're going to go in and do what they do and change you. Most people probably aren't going to be able to comport with that retrofitting, changing their revision, right? So if you're, let's just give a hypothetical, you're a human 3.0. We'll say that like 3D human, you're a human 3.0. And now, bing, not a vaccine, because legally a vaccine has to stimulate the immune system, and that's what aluminum is used for. Aluminum is an adjuvant in a vaccine used to stimulate your immune system. See, I'm getting better. I'm not so clogged up and phlegmy, and my fingernails are getting better. I'm lifting the spots off my skin little by little. They come to the surface first, and they look like they're more, and then they go. The hair thickens up. The eyes begin to get better. The sodium begins to really just push and push and push. The rest of it's through the body. And you get puffy days and unpuffy days and cloggy days. And then eventually, you are better. Day after day after day, staying steady on the course. So I cannot continue to do consults with you if you're going to go back into your environments and slip into the bad habits. You don't have someone taking you shopping. You don't have someone preparing your food. You don't have someone that goes, okay, we're going out walking now. But. It's 21 degrees. Go ahead, get your gloves and your layers on. I'm going to show you how to dress. That wouldn't have been me coming from California. I'd be like, hell no. I ain't going out in that. No way, right? But now that I've become part woodchuck, now that I've embraced northern node, I got it in me. Just sink or swim. And I chose to keep on swimming. And I know you will too. So over and over and over, my Facebook posts, which I am very close to completely deactivating, all the accounts, all of them. Why bother? You know what I mean? It needs to be that we strengthen each other with good habits. A post I made today that was one of the most important posts was, I have family members with loads of money. I mean, not a single worry in the world about money right now. 25, 30 years ago, come on, let's go to the natural food store. I've been going since 1982 to the Bread of Life in Campbell, California. Then it was New Leaf in Santa Cruz, Staff of Life in Santa Cruz or SoCal, kind of on the border. Then it was eventually teaching at Whole Foods, Duluth, Minnesota, teaching at Carleton County. And I brought my mom, I brought other family members. I brought them. Oh, you're too good to eat like us. I said, no. If I eat Fun Dogs and regular mac and cheese with all the deep orange and yellow chemical food dyes in it, and I eat those eggs because I stopped eating eggs 37 years ago, I actually will break out with boils all over my skin. I had a couple pieces of more junky dark chocolate the other day, and I get exactly what my mother gets. I got this kind of like a welt under my right eye. So when I do your hair tissue test, if I say your adrenal function is at this level, it's very, very low, or it's medium, we're okay, but we could bring it up a little bit, or it's really, really dangerously low, which I did for another young woman 6 months ago, and she's no longer here. I did for another little girl, and I was worried. I don't want to freak out the mom. So I'm like, let's get on this and this and this. I mean, let's get on this. We need to do this because When puberty comes and these other packets of data open up, and I can't tell you any more than that, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to risk myself. So read between the lines. People used to say when I first got on Facebook in 2009, how come you write in parables? I said, well, I don't think I do write in parables. And they said, well, yeah, actually, I'm going to take my jacket off because it's really, really warm in here. They said, yeah, actually you do. I'm like, well, I don't think so. Why don't you just write in common English? I said, I don't know. That's how I live in my mind. That's how I think, And when I hear, whether you want to call it a God-given gift or I call it development, because I don't believe that only some of us can do it. I believe that when you are anointed, meaning you are secreting, your hypothalamus is doing what it needs to do to regulate your appetite, your blood pressure, body temperature. Your pituitary gland, that little P, is sending that thyroid stimulating hormone down, right? Your pineal gland is helping with aldosterone and melatonin and all these. It's helping with those. And it's also secreting melatonin. So when you lay down to go to sleep, and ideally on the floor, and I don't know how else to tell you except please take my word for it. Okay, did I show you my sleeping mat? I think I did. My sleeping mat is, see it right there against the wall? Let's see. This is my sleeping mat. It's by Wilpo, and it's got straps on it, so it will, it'll fold up. But what I'm finding is that it takes some time to sleep on it repeatedly, and it starts getting softer and softer. So when you first get it, especially it was so cold that day that the fibers were like just really tense. I was like, gosh, this thing is really stiff. It's going to be like hauling around this board everywhere. And I wanted to be able to throw it into, the vehicle and use it as a sleeping mat or whatever. And I'm thinking, okay, it's in a warmer environment. It took a few days and it's getting softer and softer. So I should be able to get to the point where I can roll it up. And then today I went over to Northern Tool and see the mats that Fire's laying on. These are all, see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's called a puzzle mat. And they click together like a puzzle, and each package of 4 of those is $12.99 at Northern Tool. It makes cleanup easier in the winter. It's a lot more comfortable to stand on it. They're not super cushy, but a little better than a super hard floor. Not that I needed the pain relief or anything, but it makes it nicer for the dogs to lay on. So let's see, I got 1, 2 last night, and then today I got 6 of them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right here. 6 of these mats for $12.99 at Northern Tool. That's my little hot tip for today. My little actionable tip is that these are amazing. I can pick up the 4 pieces, and then they're like only just so big, 4 together. I could put them in an RV, the bus, the van that you travel in, and then you can have something kind of out in front of your little area with your little makeshift patio. So it's not like, oh, they're only going to be for the house. I mean, they can also be for your van dwelling, your schoolie, your RV, your car dwelling. I mean, so many people are launching out and doing this. So the gist of this video today, Transition Times, was think about the dystopian. Let me get rid of that big light. Think about the dystopian cartoon, the Jetsons. And think about the fact that when they burnt this place up, and they were uploading consciousness and they were, kind of berated by their employers because they were fortunate enough to go live in the stratosphere. They just left Earth. And if you look at what's going on with Mars and everything that's gone on with us, we don't really wake up until much later in life. We don't really wake up fully and realize, hey, wait a minute, something doesn't smell right here. So what happens is if you've already got insufficient myelination, well, what is myelin? Remember, myelin is that plasma-like fascia-like, so like a string of pearls, but soft, that goes around your nerves, your nervous system. It cushions it and it helps to send electrical impulses. That myelin, that from birth to about age 2, mama downloaded what you needed to, like the mycelium we talked about, myelin, mycelium, my individual vehicle, mycelium under the earth, myelin in the body. How can you have myelin sufficient in baby who's now going to have to deal with toxic elements coming at them? Foodstuffs that are not food. And as the man that I started to tell you his name, William Albrecht, he was laughed at, much like I've been laughed at for decades, or poo-pooed, or charlatan, you this or you that, you're not, whatever. You have to be strong as F, okay? Because either it's in your blood and you're like, I'm gonna do this thing, or you're gonna be like so bullied that you just get out of it, right? And I rode through those times until I could say, hey, here's what's going on. Do you want me to help you? Do you want me to help your child? Well, I'm not a hobby, and I do have to pay my bills. I've got to pay rent here, $834 a month plus my parking. Got to feed the dogs. I can't go to Petco and buy their stuff and be like, oh, hey, do you mind? I mean, like, I just assumed you were going to give me the food for free. I've got to pay taxes and tax preparation, gas in my car and repairs and tabs and all the things you do. So no, you can't just pick me up on the phone or, quickly send me a message on Facebook. Hey, what do you think about? I just don't have time. I don't have time. Okay. I'm on a limited window to get some, of time that is in my mind to get certain things done. And transition times. Look at what they showed you. Listen to what your gut is telling you, your intuition. Listen to the ancestors. Connect. Start to trust yourself. And you will be wobbly for the first 5 or 10 years of doing this. You will be. It'll be wobbly. It won't just bing. It won't just come on. It doesn't do that. You're going to learn how to use it, and it's going to take a little time. And that can be frustrating. I mean, I can tell you it took me a long, long time to get this proficient. What I'm hearing is that it's a domestication device because we're already domesticated animals. We've already had numerous changes. And there's already been all these other injectable experimentations. Well, I wonder how they're going to fare if we do this, or I wonder how they're going to fare if we've got, I-131 ionizing radiation in the air. I wonder how they're going to fare if we do this. I wonder how they're going to fare if we do chemotherapy. And I wonder how they're going to fare. Well, maybe it's time to stop. I'm kind of self-conscious about my hair. I shampooed it, stuck it in this lovely little tam and said, that's good. It's cold outside. When it wasn't even that cold. We have time. I don't want to be forced into something. Okay. Medical authority is all fine and dandy if that's what you want, but it's not what I want. I don't want medical authority. I figure I do what I'm supposed to do. I follow the rules and jump through the hoops. That's what I'm willing to do. And then I would like to get into a little less restrictive, prohibitive, monitored, surveyed kind of an existence. You know what I mean? So whether that's land in Africa, right now I'm looking, towards Ghana. Like ideally it'd be great to have a place where I'm there several months out of the year and I'm over here working with the centers or not, maybe over there. I know Dr. Sebi tried to open 7 Bolingo centers. And I know that without you helping me, coming to my aid, helping me to get this expanded, the centers and the council are not going to become a reality. So that's why I have to say, whoops, you can't just send me question after question after years and years and years and years and years of giving and giving and giving to bankruptcy. Now I've got to focus on books so they will get into the hands of the right individuals who say, we need to do something here. We have to take action, and I want to be so thankful to Sister Kim at Pure Luminosity Channel for always attributing me and giving maximum respect. Thank you to Sister Kim. Okay, so let's say goodnight, Pablo. Pablo, you saying goodnight? Transition times, the 144,000, the mark. The Jetsons and Dystopian, the domestications, the injections. The changing of nature, so that you would have numerous system errors that became diagnosis codes, right? You're being run by a simulated computer that is set up on codes, that is changing the field that you live in, the electromagnetic field that you don't see, you don't touch it, but nonetheless you're within it. Its gravity is what ties you down to it, and you traverse constantly in your loops and predictable patterns, you traverse the motherboard. Many of those that find themselves to be the elite are mother hostile individuals. They are why we now today have so many cold mothers. Mothers who are taking selfies and all kinds of, they've disconnected from the highest value, which is to connect our people, connect our children, to give their children what they need to carry the torch forward, the torch. Okay? We don't need to be a warring, battling, fighting, divisive. We have another war, no warship. What we need is connection, not division. So distancing people, lockdowns, and restricting me like I'm a young child at 59, you're going to stay in your house. You're going to do this and you're not going to do that. That's not something that appeals to me, because I have the ability to moderate my behavior, and I'm doing that because of my hair tissue testing. Having been very high copper and bringing it down, I'm able to now be grounded and be presenting you with crystal clear insights. Even if for you, where you are with your, for a few of you, very, very low copper deficit, pushing you into, depressive moods and flat affected and hostility because your iron levels start going up and your copper levels are going way down. It makes you hostile. It gives you mood disorders. It might make you manic and depressed. So you've got bipolar, two poles, right? Manic, woo, high, and super giddy. And oh God, everything's terrible and you're in bed. I talk with a lot of moms in the mothers group on Facebook. And they're like, I have to use Xanax. I just drink all the time. I'm losing my house. I'm this, I'm that. And I'm like, no. Let's get the hair tissue test. Let's balance you out on these levels so you can be proactive about your grief, because the grief isn't going to go away, but the physical hurt and the physical pain, you don't need to have them compounding you and making everything like super escalated, way out of control, because it's already too much. It's already the worst possible thing I've ever lived through, the worst. It's got me wrecked. I got my little baby Zawa picture right here. Thank you. Make it a wonderful evening. I hope that you made sense. I tried to recap, tried to give you a little tip about the maths. My goals, my mission, my heart is real. Thank you for joining me.